So we're back with a really important conversation about gambling. We opened our season talking about gambling, and we're going to keep talking about it. So I think this is going to be a great continuity to our first season 3 guest, but this is going to get into North Carolina's work in gambling, and that's really important. So I'm excited for it.
And it's very timely as we're looking at more gambling bills come through the legislature, thinking about last session and the legalization of sports betting. North Carolina is at a really critical moment. So now really is the right time for us to be chatting with these folks.
Yep. Welcome to Connections, the podcast from addiction professionals of North Carolina, where we discuss addiction through the lens of policy and practice.
We're your hosts,
Sarah Howe
and Morgan Coiner, and we're here to help you see how it all connects.
We're coming to you live from APNC's Spring 25 conference in beautiful Lake Junaluska, North Carolina. We've been out in the mountains all week, having a wonderful time learning. We've had a lot of different speakers here, and we're so excited because we have the opportunity to bring some of those speakers direct to you like we have today. We've got 2 great individuals here for us today.
Yes, today with us we have Tiffany Reddick. She is the Treatment and Recovery Coordinator for North Carolina DHHS's Problem Gambling Program. And we also are joined by Josh Hampton. He is the Problem Gambling Program Coordinator at Sunrise, just up the road in Asheville. So welcome to the podcast.
Thank you.
Of course.
We're excited to have you. And I think what really excites me is we are starting to have a conversation about problem gambling, gambling addiction, that a year or 2 ago was really more in the shadows. And we're really starting to have that conversation. Of course, we're starting to see more of it. We're starting to see more availability of gambling. We're starting to see more acceptance of it. But as we look at the work we do, many of our members are substance use disorder professionals. They work in prevention, they work in treatment, they work in recovery. Tell us why it's important for those individuals to start paying attention to problem gambling.
Well, I know for one thing, there is definitely a co-occurrence. It's very common. I don't right off the top of my head know the exact percentages.
Sure.
But that is definitely a thing. And you know, especially with the legalization of sports betting March of last year, I know just as a provider for the helpline, the referrals that I've had come in for recovery coaching and peer support have definitely increased, you know, more than doubled, I would say, from what I was receiving previous to that. And, you know, I think getting the conversation started is crucial.
Well, I know, Tiffany and you and I have had multiple meetings over the last year. And I remember at one of them, y'all were telling us like the increase in calls was like at least 60%. Like y'all really, once that hit, saw it, unfortunately, just take off in the state. But at the same time, people are perhaps realizing they have a problem.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I think one of the things that is also happening is that even if you were not inclined to engage in that online sports betting, all of the imagery, some of the excitement and the language might also be activating, because we've also seen utilization increase as well, but not necessarily seeing the conversion for new referrals that are going to providers. That means that the folks that are already in the system being seen are being seen more. And we saw that almost immediately as well. So one of the things that is important to know about gambling is it's the addictive disorder that has the highest level of suicidality. You know, so when we are talking about making sure that folks are equipped to identify, screen, treat, appropriately refer. I think it's important that we talk about gambling because it can be so hidden. So, you know, it's time to bring in the highlight because the implications are pretty critical when you think about that.
So we love to do this with our audience. Tell us a little bit more what brought you to this work. What makes you passionate about this work in problem gambling?
Sure, I'll start there. So I was introduced to this work through organization, international organization called TELUS Health that does a lot of healthcare, EAP, HR type supports for organizations across the world. They operate North Carolina's problem gambling hotline, and one of the services they have to offer is a motivational interviewing style telephonic coaching program. So this was COVID, and they sent out an email that said, hey, we're seeking counselors to work with this program. And I wanted to learn addiction, but as a person, as an affected other of substance use and addiction in my own family, I didn't necessarily want to work on the substance use side. So I was ready for a new challenge, and this presented itself, and it seemed like a way that I could learn more about addiction without kind of stepping into areas where I wasn't necessarily prepared or equipped to do so. So from there, I worked that program for a year, and then went on to greener pastures. And then about 2 to 3 years later, the pastures weren't so green anymore. And I ended up back at TELUS Health. They were introducing the role with the expansion of the online sports betting. The state had received new funding that opened up more opportunities, and my role was a part of that. And so here I am today.
We're lucky to have you.
Yes, yeah.
Josh, what's your background?
So I am a person in recovery, not only from substance use disorder, but problem gambling as well. My recovery date for no substances is over 3 years ago, but my recovery date from gambling is not that long. It was something that carried over. And I honestly did not see so much that was as big of an issue as what it was until the drugs were gone, and that was still there. So, being in recovery, peer support was a natural transition for me as far as a career move. A lot of the things I do as far as connecting folks with resources, sharing my lived experience in a way that could help somebody else in their recovery journey were things I was already doing. And now, I'm very blessed to say I get paid to do these things. And the opportunity presented itself a little less than 2 years ago to coordinate the expansion of the problem gambling program with Sunrise Community here in Asheville. And, at first I didn't really know what to do with it, but we got the ball rolling, and it's been a really exciting journey.
Yeah. I'm really interested in, we're not hearing a ton of gambling recovery stories. Mm-hmm. So, we hear in substance use, now there can always be more resources. Hear me. There can always be more resources. But, what is that journey in recovery like? Is there a lot of support and we just don't hear about it? Or is it, something you've had to sort of journey more independently through because not many people are talking about it?
Yeah, so there are resources available. Definitely, we have the North Carolina Problem Gambling Program helpline. You can get connected with a clinician or a peer support specialist or recovery coach at no cost to North Carolina residents. There's no cost financial counseling in North Carolina, but the awareness of those resources could be greater. I didn't know about any of those.
Well, no cost.
Yeah.
Right. That's almost, that's kind of a no-brainer. If you're ready to get help.
For sure.
How are we not?
So you're talking about free resources for North Carolinians. What's the number? Where can they call?
Okay, so for North Carolina residents, the North Carolina Problem Gambling Program helpline number is 877-718-5543. And it is an amazing resource. And then the no-cost financial counseling, you can be connected with that as well through the helpline.
And if I can interject, you mentioned that if you're ready to get help, you don't even have to be ready to get help. You could just be curious. That was part of the program that
good point.
That's so good.
Yeah, you could just be curious, want resources, want to find out what's out there for when you are ready. And the program that I worked with, I mentioned before, that was our whole goal, was to help folks move through those stages of change, to help resolve, we call it ambivalence, but when you're not really sure what you want to do or where you want to go, whether you want to go abstinence or harm reduction, or just have some help with a family member, because all of these services are also offered to affected others. So that means parents, children, family members, even friends of folks that are impacted. And you could just be purely curious about what there is to offer, and we can still have an avenue to give you some support through.
Okay, so I might be curious. I might need some support. Let's back it up a little bit. How do I know, or does a family member know, what are the potential signs and symptoms of problem gambling or a gambling disorder?
Absolutely. Great question. One of the warning signs, symptoms can be their preoccupation. So they might be talking a lot, or spending a lot of time at the casino. One of the challenges with the mobile sports betting is that we don't really know. And gambling is already a really isolative activity, that leads to the idea of it could be a hidden addiction. So there's no, slurred speech. There's no alcohol on the breath, and so when we're in our phones, we don't know if they're doing homework or if they're on DraftKings. So having that, conversation, but also kind of being aware of, like, if they're paying a lot of attention to odds all of a sudden, and where they used to be a fan of X team, now, they used to be a Duke fan, now they're cheering for UNC. Those are some of the signs as it relates to online sports betting. Some of the other things can be, you might see a little bit of overlap with substance use. So like the isolating, irritability, especially if they can't get to their phone or get to a casino, or, even if you're not really sure, like there's a edginess or irritability that we're not really sure where it came from. So those can be a few of the signs.
I imagine there's some similarities probably in the like isolation, or, sometimes people who have a substance use disorder will disappear is maybe not the right word, but like they're sort of unreachable, and it's because they've gone out and they're using, or they're in a casino and they've lost track of time. Or I imagine some of those symptoms might also overlap with how substance use disorder presents.
Absolutely. Even spending more time. So like we might used to go to, Heroes or something together. Now they might be starting to take more trips by themselves, or there might be suddenly a friend group that, is having trips that outside that you don't know anything about. So that could also be a sign of that increased use, because, much like substance use disorder, there is the tolerance. So the need for more to get the same impact. What else am I missing, Josh?
So I would say the chase and losses, which that may be something more for the individual to see, because if they are hiding it and, family doesn't really know what's going on, that's a big one. I know for me personally, that's when I started seeing the biggest negative impact in my life. When I would chase those losses, I would go into the game room, with the intention of it being just a recreational activity to pass some time or to hang out with the folks that were there. And I would be broke by the time I left and not realize like I had no more money in my pocket. And that's a horrible feeling. But that's one. So, loss of control. I don't know that would be something the family member would see.
Bailouts.
The bailouts.
And so if they're starting to ask for money all of a sudden, or increasing amounts of money, or never seem to have money when rent due or bills due. One of the interesting things too that we're seeing, because there's a lot of gambling elements now being incorporated into video games. So teens and even children are beginning to ask for money. And I'm not saying your child playing Roblox and asking for a couple bucks every now and then has a gambling problem, but it is something to watch, because when you think about early exposure to, that's similar with substance use as well. So early exposure to a substance use, so early exposure to gambling. So getting your children lottery tickets, not the best idea. If you're taking your children with you to Vegas and allowing them to, put money in the slot machine. Again, most people, it really could be fine. But there are some real implications that we can see in terms of later developing gambling disorder or problematic gambling behaviors.
One of the most horrifying things I have seen in the last few months is the rise of something called smart vapes. And they are purely marketed at youth. They have things like your pet. As you puff the smart vape, you can feed your your virtual pet. You get coins. You can bet those coins. The intersection, the cross play that the industry is trying to connect those addictions. We've talked about this for years in substance use. You need lifelong customers and you need to replace those customers. So you've got to start them at a young age. Well, now we've got ways to hook them, whether it's through vaping, whether it's through their phones, whether they now see the line on the game they're watching with their family. We are changing the brain chemistry of kids and young adults quickly. And we're moving faster than I think our field has been able to keep up with this technology. It seems like it's changing every day.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And that's the thing about technology and I don't want to be Chicken Little, the sky is falling, but it is definitely an emerging concern to keep an eye on and stay equipped with the tools that you need to be able to keep your eye on it, because you don't know what you don't know.
It's the most accessible addiction, someone told me.
Well, and it just continues. Sure. It just continues to underscore this need for being very aware of your children's technology use. What are they using? How are they using it? How often are they using it? Are they supervised when they're using it? Are there any parental controls, right? I think we've had a lot of conversations around screen time and things like that for years. And this is kind of like, okay, here's one more reason why that's something we should be doing, because here is yet another danger that we are facing, not in the sky is falling or doomsday prepping kind of thing, but just this is the reality.
Right.
This is the world they're going to grow up in. We can choose to recognize that or not.
So vulnerable population that we need to protect them. Yeah, and one of the way we can do that, one of the easiest ways, is with information, which you can also get through the North Carolina Problem Gambling Program.
Yeah.
So we do a lot of work with treatment programs, substance use treatment programs. So we'd love to see more of that intersection with assessment, assessing those problem gambling behaviors, then treatment, helping them on the way to recovery. I know from talking to providers, a lot of them said, well, we just don't do that. It's not a substance use disorder. How can we engage our field more in this work and help us maybe understand what they can do that is low barrier? What are some of the easiest things that a provider can do to get started in the conversation?
Yeah. I would say screening.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, there's one, it's the lie bit. It's 2 questions. I mean, this could be done in any type of assessment. It would take 2 minutes, depending on how much detail you went in with a participant. But it's 2 questions. I think the first one is, have you ever lied to gain money to bet, or lied about how much you bet? And the second question is, have you ever thought about harming yourself because of your gambling? And there's others, types of screaming, the brief biosocial, BBGS.
Yes.
Yeah. So it's like, what, 5
I think
to 10 questions?
Right. Depending on because most of the screeners are clips of the longer assessments or screening tools. And they are designed to be really easily and, accurately input. Because if somebody says yes to any of the questions on the initial screening tools, that's an indication that they've been impacted by gambling related harm. And so that can open the door to a conversation. I know in substance abuse, they talk about the SBIRT model. There's a similar in gambling of the GBIRT, and our presentation today leans a little bit into that. But it's basically the same thing, is that you screen based on the indication. You might assess further, or you might implement like a brief intervention, like some psychoeducation, a conversation, a connection with peer support who might be able to walk them further through wherever they might want to land on how they begin to address this. So beyond screening, just equipping ourselves with the education and tools so it's not so mysterious, it's not so dangerous. We can have those conversations in the assessment and ask specifically if somebody mentions they spend a lot of their time on video games, we might have a little flag that raises to say, oh, well, do you ever spend money during those video games? How much money are you spending? How much time are you spending? So not only are you not getting information about the hobbies and already things that you would probably ask about, you're giving yourself more information about if this is something I might need to keep an eye on. And, you by engaging with information and the education and the access and just increasing our overall awareness about this, equips us to be able to better, provide, redirect, refer, the R, to that appropriate treatment pathway.
So if they do the 2 question, but they're not prepared, they don't have maybe the treatment protocol, they can call that number. The provider can call and help and at least get that referral started, right?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely. Or they could provide the number and a pamphlet, which we also, can mail out through the problem gambling program as well. Because sometimes the helpline and calling it, I don't know about you, but,
it can be a process.
Right.
It can feel very scary. I mean, I remember when I was curious about recovery, right? Like, I took like an online quiz. It was like, am I an alcoholic? And then it said, maybe. And I was like, that's enough for today. Right. And it probably took me another 2 years to start walking towards recovery. But like, it was still always in the back of my head. Like that quiz said, maybe,
Yeah.
And so I think I love that perspective of just like, where they are. Let's just get them information. And then, it might still be in their head when they're at the casino. They may not be acting on it yet, but it's there. Exactly. And that's better than nothing, right? As a step.
Exactly. And they know that there's a place they go when they're ready.
Yeah.
In a friendly condition that might be able to support them in it.
Yes.
Versus saying, oh, no, not today. I think that's not, you're on opiates, so we're not going to, deal with that,
Well, and I'm curious about the, the brain piece of this, because we talk so much in substance use about changes the biology of the brain. It changes the neurochemistry. Like, with gambling, like we draw this parallel between it and substance use disorder. Like, where are those similarities in terms of how gambling affects the brain and the development of the brain?
You want to take it or?
Tiffany, take it away.
So one of the reasons that gambling disorder is the first behavioral addiction to make it into the DSM is because of what we know about neurobiology now and the technology that we have to do the brain mapping and scans and things. And what they were seeing was that the areas of the brain that were lighting up when a person was gambling were very similar to the parts of the brain that light up when a person, I want to say they compared it to a person using cocaine. Yeah. And so additionally, one of the other things that they saw was that the parts of the brain lit up more when the person was losing versus when they were winning. So, which was probably contrary to what they were thinking would happen, that when they're winning, the dopamine and whatnot would be higher. And so that inspired a bunch of other science, and I don't know the process, but that inspired the folks to go through the processes of saying like, hey, this is a biologically related condition that we might need to take more seriously. I don't know the politics of what goes into DSM or not, but there is a lot of science about that. This is a organic, genetic, biological condition that is very similar to what we see with folks with chronic substance use as well.
Josh, you mentioned the phrase chasing losses. Mm-hmm. And then is that what you were going to ask?
Yes.
Sara and I sometimes have one brain, but and then Tiffany, you mentioned the brain lighting up when people are losing.
It's the process, really. I mean, that shows like the process is almost, as rewarding as the win, if not more. So it could be more. Yep. The anticipation. And I know for me, it was definitely like that. And one thing, just to touch on this, like that is very unique, I feel, to separate gambling disorder from substance use disorder, is the fact that as a problem gambler, I always thought that, I could gamble my way out of having that problem and then I could be done. Mm-hmm. That I would be down, like when I would go in and I would be chasing my losses and I'm like, this is so dumb. I would feel really horrible and ashamed, and I'd want to stop, but I'm like, I've already spent, $1,000, $1,500. And if I can only get some of that back, like, and then that gambler's fallacy comes in, like, well, I know I'm bound to win soon. Mm-hmm. And and to really honestly, like, wholeheartedly want to walk away and be done, but to be down so much, and I know that's a very small sum compared to what some people have won or lost, but it's not about the amount of money, it's about how it negatively impacts your life. But yeah, just to say that about chasing losses and to tie in.
Well, we opened our season of this podcast with Rex Chapman.
Okay.
And he said the same thing. He said, I chased those losses more than I chased the wins. And what was fascinating was he said, I was making millions of dollars. So the money I was making in gambling wasn't going to change my life. I wasn't in a position where that was going to be, I was going to get a different home and a different lifestyle. I was chasing something else, and the losses so much more than the highs from the wins. So when you talk about that brain chemistry lighting up, we've heard it from multimillionaires to everyday individuals that are gambling all of their life savings, just like he did. And he's talked about that. But I find that fascinating when you said, there's something there, obviously.
Well, and I think too, I was at a 12-step meeting once, and this person comes in and they're just like, I cannot stop buying scratch-off tickets. I can't get high. I just keep buying scratch-offs.
Yeah.
And I think that's probably a very, that's what he's chasing. He's chasing the high.
That dopamine.
And he's getting it. Because the scratch, let's look at the math. We're not winning big on scratch-offs, right? Like, the math doesn't work out for us. But it's that same,
Yep.
That anticipation or that risk.
Yeah.
And I imagine spending, because some of the things you're saying, I feel like could relate to some like a spending addiction or a shopping addiction. But it seems like what really differentiates gambling again from that is it's the risk. I can spend my money and it's gone, and I know it's gone, and there's no inherent risk there.
Right.
Yeah. So
yeah. I know we're unbelievably already close to time. These conversations go by really fast. So first of all, are you all welcome to come back? Would you be willing if we do a part 2 on this? I think as our field really starts to explore this, I'm so excited to hear that there's peer support in gambling.
Yeah, it is exciting.
This is just the tip of the iceberg of what we need to do. And I'm grateful for you for doing that and being there to do that. I want to leave our listeners on a good note, though. So there is recovery in substance use disorders. There's recovery for gambling. And I'd love to hear more about that.
Yeah. So my recovery from gambling, again, like I mentioned at the start, my recovery date is not as far back as my, substance recovery date, because I continued to gamble and try to regulate my emotions with the gambling. Yeah. But the recovery, as far as like in-person meetings, we couldn't find any in this area. Western North Carolina does not have any in-person GA meetings, but we have started one at Sunrise every Tuesday from 6 to 7 at 209 Tunnel Road in Asheville. So now we have an in-person problem gambling support group where folks can come and connect with others who are also struggling with gambling and just share. It's structured, really loosely. It's not 12-step, but there is that resource. And there are folks in recovery. There's folks that are utilizing the virtual GA meetings or other things like Smart Recovery or All Recovery, for gambling. But for me not gambling, recovery is challenging, and I always feel like life doesn't get any easier. It just gets better. And, the problems are not the same problems that I had before. I'm not worried about not having the money for the bills or not having money to support my family. Not to say that we're just rolling in it, but being financially responsible is a great feeling. And being able to be that today and to be able to support my family and be, consistent is really great. And my life has got tremendously better being in recovery as opposed to before. I'm not on probation anymore. I have my license back. I'm not in jail.
Those are all great things to celebrate. And we know that for every person that is in front of a microphone, there's people behind it that need to hear what you said. And there's others out there in recovery too, that we are lifting their voices for lifting them up here. So thank you for that.
Thank you for being, I don't think either of you expected maybe to be gambling experts or problem gambling experts, but you are leading the charge here in this state, and we're really grateful to have you doing it.
Thank you so much.
It's a privilege and an honor.
Well, thank you for being here. We might have to have a part 2.
Oh, for
especially as we continue to do this work in the state. We want to keep checking in with you on how it's going. How much did I love the fact that we have peer support for gambling?
Yeah, I didn't know that.
Did not know that we have been able to start looking at this along the continuum. We are not just keeping it isolated, but we are looking at where it intersects with other substance use disorders. And we've been able to talk about recovery. That's so important.
Well, and, we had a peer, and then we have a clinician who has really pivoted her career to specifically focus on gambling. And she is hopefully just the first of many, but truly a trailblazer.
Look, this conversation is timely. We're going to need to have more of it because we continue to see an explosion of gambling across the state and across this country. So I'm so glad they were able to join us, and they may be back.
I hope so. Awesome.